Hey guys, how's it going? It's Al. I've got a new video for you today. This is one of my 3 uploads this week. We're going to go over some of the players that I have drafted most in the over 50 fantasy drafts that I've done this season. I've broken down the percentage guys that I have, and I'm going to give you the list of all the players that I have more than 25% exposure to in the draft. So my most drafted players for you, so that you can see all the information that I've put out this year. Am I backing it up with players that I'm actually drafting in money leagues? Yes, I am. And maybe there's a few guys on this list that maybe you haven't heard me talk about that you're going to come up on as well, that you can utilize in late rounds of your fantasy leagues, because that's where a lot of the overlap comes. It's not the first round guys, because you're going to get equal shares of the players that you like early in drafts, right? So if you get a number 1 pick, you're probably taking one of Barkley or Christian McCaffrey. If you get the 4 pick, you're getting whoever's left over between Barkley, McCaffrey, or David Johnson or Alvin Kamara, and all that stuff's going to even out. So it's very hard to get over 20 or 30% of somebody that you're going to draft in the first round, because if you do a lot of drafts, you're going to get as many 1s as you get 12s. You get as many 4s as you get 8s. And that's going to throw you into different type of scenarios unless you're really willing to overdraft somebody. And I've kind of done that a little bit in my drafts. I've taken, when I get the 1 pick, I kind of flip-flop between Barkley and Christian McCaffrey. And then when I get the 2 pick, everybody tends to pick Barkley, so I get left with McCaffrey at 2. So I actually am a little bit overweight on Christian McCaffrey versus the field, and definitely versus people that draft at 1 and never pick Christian McCaffrey as well. So that kind of works its way in. But typically speaking, a lot of these are going to be middle to late round guys. I've already done a video that we'll link with a card that you can see of some of the players that I think are going to outperform their ADP. They're going to pop up in this video, as well as guys that I'm overweight on because they're players that I'm higher on. So I want to say thank you for all the support that you guys have given to this channel. We've reached almost this August, since I've started producing preseason content again, leading into the football season. You realize we're up almost 1,000 subscribers on this channel. Thank you. It's all because of you guys clicking on this channel and being as kind as you are to click that subscribe button, the like button on the videos. Every video over 90% or 98% likes versus dislikes. That's all because of you guys. I appreciate you for that, as well as the 15 to 20% growth that we've seen on Instagram. Links to all my other socials are down below. I would really appreciate a follow. If you want to follow me on Instagram as well, link for that is below in the description. Just click show more if you want to follow me over there. So why don't we just get to this video of my most drafted players that I have throughout the 50 drafts that I've done so far. And I've been drafting since May. The first guy, the highest owned quarterback, we're gonna go position by position: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. And I play mostly best balls. Pretty much 99% of the leagues that I do are best ball drafts. If you don't know what a best ball draft is, that means that there's no transactions. There's no trades. There's no waiver wire. You draft pretty deep, 18 rounds, no defenses, no kickers. The system will automatically put into your lineup the highest scoring lineup for that week: a quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a flex, and a tight end. It will automatically pick those from all your players. It's just a matter of which players are healthy. It ends up being a war of attrition, and your standard drafting rules apply, although you're probably going to draft more for players with upside and take a little bit more risk, as you'll see once I get to the wide receivers. But I do the same thing with quarterbacks. I tend to focus on late round quarterbacks, and that's all you're going to see here from the guys that I have the most of. I'm going to go with players that I have over double the field. So 17% and up at quarterback. Josh Allen, I have 32% exposure to Josh Allen because he's going as like the QB 20 in most leagues. He's available, typically speaking, from the 11th to the 14th round, depending on the draft that you're doing. I'm drafting him as a QB2 in most of the leagues that I'm running. I tend to wait until the 9th, 10th, 11th round to pick my QB1. I try to find some correlation with some of the wide receivers that I have. You don't need to correlate Josh Allen with a wide receiver. I personally have. We'll get to which one it is later. And he also goes pretty late as well. So 32% Josh Allen for me. Perfect QB2. QB1 of the week upside every single week that he plays. Love having a lot of shares of him. Cam Newton, I've said on every video this season, you guys have watched it, you can probably say it along with me. Every single year that he's been healthy of his entire career, he's been a top 5 quarterback, except for last season when he had that shoulder injury and fell off. I have currently 26% Cam Newton. Most of those shares were in the 10th and later rounds. He has now moved up. He is being drafted in the 8th and 9th rounds based on the fact that people are starting to realize that he is healthy, and he's starting to be reflected as the QB7 or QB8. I still think he has top 5 QB upside. I was drafting him as a QB9 through QB14 in a lot of drafts. So a ton of value here for me from drafting way earlier in the offseason, from the time May came around, June and July, when I was doing a ton of drafts, as well as the one or two a day that I'm doing right now. The next QB that I have a lot of... The next QB that I have a lot of is Sam Darnold from the New York Jets. I expect in his second year for him to make a little bit of a leap. We know that the offense has looked very good this preseason. I like the weapons that they have gotten for him, putting Jamison Crowder in the slot, Le'Veon Bell in the backfield to ease things up a lot, as well as having Enunwa on the outside, Robbie Anderson on the outside. All of these players are coming at a value as well. They're going to sprinkle in a little bit later in this draft because they're very easy to pair with Sam Darnold if you are drafting Sam Darnold as one of the later QBs. One guy that I've reached on a little bit in drafts, drafting him the 8th and 9th, well, not the 8th, but mostly the 9th and 10th rounds when I was getting him. And he's still available as a 9th round pick in most of the drafts that I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, is Jameis Winston. The Buccaneers led the league in passing yards last year, did not lead the league in attempts. They do look like they're going to do a lot of the same this year. Bruce Arians and their offensive coordinator are going to run a lot of the same style of offense that they ran last year. They don't have a sustainable running game. They do have a really bad defense. The Buccaneers are going to have to throw it early and often. He's got really good targets to throw to between Godwin and Evans and OJ Howard and everybody else on that pass game, as well as backs that can catch the ball out of the backfield. So great upside here for Jameis Winston as well. I have 17% of Jameis Winston, just over double the field. Moving on to running backs, Marlon Mack. Now, I've been buying Marlon Mack in the 3rd and 4th rounds most of the season. He is still available in the late 3rd. He has slid a little bit recently because of Andrew Luck's injury concerns. I don't like the fact that Luck is injured now with the amount of Marlon Mack shares that I have, considering that I've got 30% of Marlon Mack as my highest owned running back this year. I expect this offense to be tremendous. It's obviously going to take a step back if Brissett is the quarterback and not Andrew Luck. But 5 offensive linemen returning from a great offensive line last year that should gel more and should see a little bit more cohesiveness this year in year 2. If Luck is there, this offense is going to be one of the top 5 in the league. Marlon Mack expanding out to being a little bit more of a 3rd down back now. They're not taking him off the field. People that are concerned about Nyheim Hines, I really think that they're doing it wrong. Evan Silva tweeted out yesterday everything that I've been saying this offseason, that he's going to be a little bit more involved in the passing game. Not expecting 6 or 7 targets a game for Marlon Mack, but if he gets 3.5 targets every single week, that is going to help you in PPR. It's going to help his floor in half PPR. He's going to see the goal line. He's going to get 20 touches a game. He's going to get a ton of snaps, and he plays on a great offense that should make repeated trips inside the 10 and the 5-yard line. My next highest owned player, Jalen Richard. I'm getting him around the 17th and 18th rounds in most drafts, and I'm drafting as my RB6. I take 6 running backs in the majority of the drafts that I do, especially if I'm drafting at the end of the 1st round and I go with a 0 RB approach. Great 0 RB running back here. They have a rookie in front of him, Josh Jacobs, who should see the vast majority of the carries, but especially in best ball, when I don't have to pick the weeks that Jalen Richard goes off and puts up starting numbers for me, I only need to start 2 running backs a week. Having him as an RB6 is a little bit of a luxury, and I'm getting him at a price that's just way too cheap. Most people are taking speculative running backs in that spot. If Josh Jacobs happens to catch an injury and misses 2 weeks, that could be a week winning scenario for me having as much Jalen Richard as I have. Miles Sanders, another running back that I was getting at a bit of a discount earlier. That discount has now dried up, as we talked about in the ADP video before, where it's just not there anymore. If you're taking Miles Sanders is now being drafted in the 5th round, early 5th round in most of the drafts that I've been doing. I was getting him in the 7th, 8th rounds earlier in the offseason. Now, look, no Eagles running back is going to see 60, 70, 80% of the touches or the snaps for the running backs on that team. They go with a back by committee. But as we've seen from the Eagles before, this is going to be a very explosive offense. If he gets 17 touches a game, Miles Sanders will most definitely outperform that draft price of 7th and 8th round picks that I was getting most of earlier in the offseason. Will he pay off a 5th round price right now? Remains to be seen. He's going to have to score a lot of touchdowns. He has shown explosiveness. I have 30% of him as well as 30% of Jalen Richard. Next running back, Royce Freeman. Somebody else that I really like for best ball. I assume that Royce Freeman is going to lead the Broncos in carries, though he may not lead the Broncos in touches. That should or could still be Phillip Lindsay, but Freeman is the guy that looks like the goal line back. Freeman has impressed all throughout camp this offseason, this preseason. I expect him to get the goal line work, get 15 carries a game. Maybe he gets a catch or two as well. The price that you had to pay for him before was about a 9th round pick. He's moved up to a 7th round pick now. I'm still fine in 0 RB. I think he's a great 0 RB running back to take if you're going that route. That means if you go wide receiver, tight end, and you don't start drafting running backs until the 5th round, or if you go the modified approach, you get one of the top 4 picks, 5 picks in the draft, you get one of those super stud running backs as your one. Having a guy like Royce Freeman as your 3, 4, or 5 running back, to me looks like a luxury. To have the amount of carries and the touches that he's going to have, and again, not having to worry about him on a game-to-game basis in best ball, a slam dunk for me. I think he's available in your transactional leagues as well as somebody that you should be targeting in the round that he's being drafted. I'm not saying draft him as a top 3 back, not saying draft him in the top 3 rounds, but where he's being drafted, I definitely believe that he is somebody who can outperform ADP, and we talked about that in the ADP video as well. Darwin Thompson. The price has risen on Darwin Thompson, the rookie for the Kansas City Chiefs, who most people had as a 3rd stringer behind Carlos Hyde. This kid has shined in the preseason. We all know about the RB1 and Andy Reid's system. Blows up every single year. Darwin Thompson is not the RB1 right now. That's Williams, but this kid is an injury away from being a league winner, just like Williams was last year down the stretch after Hunt left the Chiefs. If you have Darwin Thompson on your team, I was drafting him in May and June and July as the 17th and 18th round pick. I now have 28% of him, because that's come down from about 45% of him earlier, because I was drafting him as my RB6 a ton. Now he's going in the 12th and 13th rounds. He's being priced around the same place as Tony Pollard, the speculative backs that people are drafting as their RB4s. I don't hate that price either, but it's much more competitive to get him now, as opposed to, I know I'm walking out of a draft with Darwin Thompson as my RB6 earlier in the draft season. Rocket ship emojis everywhere. This kid has moved up draft boards drastically. Justice Hill, another one that has moved up draft boards drastically. I was getting him in the 14th, 15th round earlier in draft season. He's now being drafted as the 10th through 12th round pick. The secondary running back for the Baltimore Ravens, who tend to run it or project to run it a ton this year. Mark Ingram's still the starter, but Justice Hill making everybody miss tackles this preseason. The kid looks electric. He's running with power. He is an undersized back who can be used in the passing game. I do think that Mark Ingram still has some juice left, but at 30, Justice Hill is an injury away from being a league winner as well. He can be productive for you as the RB2 on Baltimore by getting you 10 to 15 touches a game that I think he will get in that system. If he gets 8 carries and 3 catches a game, that's solid, especially for best ball. You would love it for season long if he moves into the RB1 spot on the Baltimore Ravens, be it a merit-based promotion, be it a situation where they deal Ingram, which is more unlikely, or if unfortunate injury happens to find its way. This is a kid who could turn into a league winner. For me, I have 26% Justice Hill. Christian McCaffrey, I've got 23% of him. I spoke about why earlier. The guys that you draft at the top of the draft, your ownership is going to vary, right? It's going to even out between all those first round picks, because the more drafts you do, the law of large numbers is going to take over, and you're going to draft from each one of those positions somewhat equally. But for me, I've been peppering in. If I get 2 drafts where I have a number 1 pick, I'm going to take McCaffrey 1 in some of them. I'm going to take Saquon Barkley 1 in some other ones. I've also stacked a lot of the Panthers this offseason because I look for correlation in my best ball drafts as I'm trying to win all the money. I think the Panthers are going to be a bounce back team this year, and that some of their players were very underpriced. So Christian McCaffrey, one of the backs that I own a lot of. Moving over to wide receivers, John Brown, my number 1 wide receiver at 36% owned, correlates very well with Josh Allen. I draft him as a wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6. I'm getting him to, when I pair with Josh Allen, a lot as my QB2. 12th, 13th round, if I'm picking at the turn there, or 13th, 14th round, if I'm picking at the turn there, and both of them are available, I'll tend to just go Josh Allen and John Brown. Great play for best ball here as well, because you want the upside picks. At wide receiver, you're going to see I've got a lot of guys that can have blow up weeks and can be a little bit inconsistent, because those are the wide receivers that I'm drafting in best ball from rounds 6 or 7 all the way through round 15, because you're not as concerned with floor. You just need three wide receivers that are going to post big numbers. Jamison Crowder, though, somebody that has a very high floor. I have 32% Jamison Crowder this offseason. So far, I will probably get more, though his price has come up. Somebody I was drafting the 16th through 18th rounds earlier in drafts, now going in the 10th through 12th rounds, as people are starting to realize the amount of volume that he is going to get. Sam Darnold has thrown to his slot a ton last season. Remember those weeks when Quincy Enunwa was getting 10 and 12 targets every single week last year, and on DraftKings he was priced below 4,000? Well, Jamison Crowder now in that role, and I think that Enunwa is a fine NFL player, but I think Crowder is a much more explosive target, especially out of the slot. I expect big things out of this Jets offense, not like to be a top 5 offense or anything, but versus the price that their players are going for, and the fact that I have as much Darnold as I have, as much Jamison Crowder as I have, you can see what I expect out of this Jets offense, and you'll see a little bit more as we move on. Adam Humphries, 30% Adam Humphries. Again, this is a guy that I'm drafting at the end of drafts. Very safe play at wide receiver, should be peppered with targets, give you a very high floor, albeit doesn't have the ceiling of some other guys, both because of he plays in that offense, his low average depth of target, but a safe pick that's available for you from the 15th round and on in your drafts. Curtis Samuel, I was getting a ton of him in the 9th and 10th rounds, and then Matt Harmon went on the Edge podcast with Adam Levitan and started talking about how good Curtis Samuel is. Now you got to get him in the 7th round. So y'all know my feelings about that. We talked about it earlier a month ago on the podcast and here on the stream on Twitch. Curtis Samuel's still a great pick. 30% exposure for me, most of it at a value versus his current ADP, which is a 7th round pick. DJ Moore holding as a 5th round pick. I've got 28% of him. Guess what, guys? I like the Panthers offense this year. DeSean Jackson, I love the Philly offense this year. I think this is a top 5 offense, just like I thought about the Colts as well. DeSean Jackson, one of the most impactful wide receivers over the last 20 years. Him and Randy Moss and possibly Tyreek Hill do the most for their quarterbacks and all the other pieces on the offense around them. We saw what he did with Fitzpatrick last year in Tampa Bay. He's moving to a much better offense with a better offensive line, a quarterback that's going to spread the ball, an offensive genius in terms of the head coach and offensive coordinator. DeSean Jackson in the 9th round is a great draft pick for me. If he's available in the 10th or 11th, he's a must pick for me. Tyler Lockett, I have a ton of shares of. I'm higher than him than the field, and have been drafting him ahead of other wide receivers in that range. He goes in the Godwin range for me. If both are available, it's a coin flip. I will pick Lockett or I will pick Godwin. I've got about 25% Lockett. The other wide receiver that I have 25%, Robbie Anderson. We've spoken about the Jets offense already. This is a pick that I love for best ball. He's not going to be a 10 target a game guy. I think Crowder out targets him all season long, but his average depth of target is going to be way down the field. And with the amount of pieces that they have on this Jets offense, I think that Robbie Anderson is going to make a big splash this season, especially on a week-to-week basis. I think you're going to see at least 2 games. Not at least, but I think you'll see about 2 games where he has 120 yards and 2 touchdowns on the season over the course of this season. And again, not having to pick out which weeks those are. Perfect best ball player. Great for tournaments as well, if you're playing daily fantasy. Jack Doyle, my highest owned tight end. A draft cost between the 13th and 16th rounds in most drafts. He is out-snapping currently Eric Ebron, who had all the touchdowns and is being drafted in the 7th and 8th round in most drafts. Ebron's been out-snapped by Doyle all last season when both of them are healthy. He was out-snapped and out-targeted by Doyle all preseason this year. When the first team is on the field, Jack Doyle has out-snapped Eric Ebron 2-1. There's a lot of mouths to feed on that offense. You're going to have to be on the field in order to cash in. Between Doyle, Funchess, Campbell, pass catchers like Nyheim Hines, who I expect to see a little bit more in the slot and a little bit less on third downs this season. I think Marlon Mack takes over a lot of the third down work. Jack Doyle's going to be on the field on 1st and 2nd down and on 1 tight end packages, folks. It's not going to be Eric Ebron. Now they get around the goal line and Ebron might be out there and he might be somebody that Luck prefers around the goal line. That's fine. But his production is not sustainable if he's not going to be on the field a ton. Now, if Doyle's out and he has battled injuries all last season, he's healthy right now, practicing right now, playing right now. I love the 32% of Jack Doyle that I have at the draft cost that I have him for. Evan Ingram going around the 5th round. Love this pick based on volume. Being drafted as tight end 4 or tight end 5. Whether you like OJ Howard or him better, I like both. They're both just fine going essentially sandwiched in most drafts, 2-3 picks apart in most of the drafts I've done this week. Ingram was coming at a bit of a value earlier in the draft season. Love the value with him. 28% ownership for me for Evan Ingram. Chris Herndon, somebody who's sliding, and as he slides down drafts because of the suspension, I'm just gobbling up more of him in the 15th and 16th rounds. This kid is a difference maker. When he's on the field, he is going to miss the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season because of the suspension that he has. He is a downfield threat. He's going to make a difference on this Jets offense when he gets back, and is going to see a solid amount of targets as we were seeing him get in the middle of last season. 3, 4, 6, 7, with this average yards per catch being higher than pretty much any tight end. He is somebody who's a downfield threat at tight end and gets a ton of targets for that position, especially considering where he's being drafted at the position. He's being drafted behind guys like Mark Andrews, who is not seeing the field a ton. He's the 3rd highest snapped tight end on the Baltimore Ravens currently in preseason when the first team is on the field. That means with Lamar Jackson, he may get more targets than other players, but I know I'm going to have to forfeit some games here and have health from my tight ends that I've drafted ahead of him. If he's not drafted in your league, or if you have an IR spot, if suspended players are eligible for that, love Chris Herndon as a late round play there. And of course, the poster boy, Travis Kelce. 19% Travis Kelce for me, which is well over double the field. I've been drafting him ahead of his ADP a lot this offseason. I feel like this guy's a difference maker. I've been overdrafting him for 2 seasons now, and it has not let me down for the last 2 years. I'm not changing anything this season either. Travis Kelce still the guy that I want in the majority of my leagues at tight end. And it allows me to pick a guy late like Doyle when paired with him, or late like Herndon when paired with him. That gives me the ability to, in best ball, to have one of those guys play in the flex, especially if going 0 RB. Thank you guys for being here once again. I appreciate you sitting through my most owned video. Those are the 23 players that I have more of than anybody else in the field in fantasy football. Let me know who your most owned players are down in the comments. Thank you for joining us again here today. Here's a couple more videos for you to watch, and hopefully I'll see you on Instagram, or I'll see you on Twitch, or I'll see you back here next time on Friday when we upload the next video. Bye, guys.